All right, everyone. In topsy-turvy clown world, it makes sense to tighten your internal borders while loosening up the external ones, because for some reason, this is Beijing Biden's idea, I guess. For some reason, Florida is an existential risk to the United States, and maybe we should ban domestic travel to and from Florida, at least on airlines. Whereas having hundreds of thousands of people storm the southern border and then they get catch and release, that's okay. This seems to be what Beijing Biden actually believes. And it's a little bit of pandering. I mean, I'm sure that in reality, he's well aware of the fact that that's not a good idea, but I'm sure he's also well aware of the fact that COVID is now endemic, and so it doesn't really matter, and he can just posture. If he can try to attack Florida, and their economy especially, because I'm sure a lot of people are going to Florida right now for the holidays or whatever, simply because, hey, you can go to get a burger and sit in the actual restaurant. You can walk down the street and you don't have to wear a mask. You can go on a trip there and you won't be constantly harassed by Karens threatening you and saying you're a terrible person who wants their grandma to die simply because you want to live your life in the normal way. I'm sure that is helping their economy. And DeSantis, to his credit, I'm not a huge like DeSantis super fan, and of course I'm not a Republican. So some of his beliefs I'm sure I would find unpalatable, but to his credit, he's managing a state with a functional economy, which is more than you can say for many states. Like when I was in Vermont, it's like Rutland has been destroyed, basically. What economy? Half of the small businesses, half the downtown is empty now. The mall died, but it was basically that's like shooting a lame horse, but it's gone. It might help, by the way, to prop up the downtown a little, not to have to compete with the handful of places that were left there, I suppose. But it's been laid waste to. The only businesses there that are afloat are the big chain stores because they've got billions of dollars to throw at things. If you look at places like New York, Massachusetts, and so forth, places with the highest, by the way, per capita death rate from COVID, way ahead of Florida. Florida's, I don't think, even in the top 10. I think it's barely within the top 20. They're down in the middle of the list. A lot of them are states with hefty lockdowns. Those are the states, especially in the case of New York and New Jersey, it has to do with nursing homes. Cuomo in New York threw the sick immediately into nursing homes and wiped out the elderly population, probably to save money. He's probably like, we're going to save so much on pensions now that all these old goofballs, the old farts are dead. Is probably what he wanted to do. He's now facing some potential political repercussions for that. Remember, they wanted him on the Democratic Dream Team for potentially running in 2024. I think that shine that he had a few months ago has largely worn off at this point, even among many Democrats. It makes no sense, though, therefore, that Beijing Biden would say, hey, we're going to screw Florida, potentially. It's still being ruminated about. It's a possible plan. We're going to blockade the state of Florida because they refuse to pass my mandate. Well, I don't think that there are similar mandates in most weakly centralized Central American countries. I could be completely wrong, but I'm pretty sure that the average person in Honduras doesn't walk around in a hazmat suit at the moment. Those people, by the way, lack of COVID testing among migrants is a big problem right now. You got a case where you're trying to tamp down on this disease, and yet you're admitting fucking 5,000-10,000 people potentially every day illegally across the border who aren't even getting tested for COVID. If it's such an existential crisis, I would think that he wouldn't have stopped the completion of what was left of the southern border improvements. But he did that. There's going to be I think 100 miles that doesn't get finished, even though the money was allocated and the land already cleared. Beijing Biden is nuts. And you've got to be insane to support such a proposal that you would make your external border into Swiss cheese while clamping down illegally, in my opinion, on a U.S. state simply because the people there aren't living in constant paranoia and fear. The problem is that the Dakotas and Florida provide a really big stumbling block for the continuation of lockdowns anywhere, which is what Biden wants. He wants the whole country locked down for as long as he's president. Trust me, he wants any excuse not to have to go to a rally, basically. He wants any excuse not to have to go out and show, hey, I still can only get 100 people to show up even when there's no lockdown. It's an excuse for Biden and for the Democrats who have no actual organic support floor. What's happening is that people are beginning to look at Florida, or the Dakotas, especially South Dakota, and say they're not on the top for deaths per capita. They're not on the top for number of deaths. They're not on top for people in the ICU or any of these things. In fact, they're just a random The states that have little to no lockdown restrictions or mask mandates and stuff like that are doing just as well as an aggregate, as an average, as states that have basically completely shut themselves. So why are you shutting yourself if it's obviously not making any difference? The only difference that's being made anywhere in the world has to do with vaccination. Vaccination, or the population got nice and infected early on, and now you've got less of a host reservoir because you've got enough people that have at least some resistance. That's what works. The mask thing has become a pile of horse shit. You got the CDC now saying, whoa, maybe you should wear 2 masks. Well, that's not going to stop the virus from being endemic. It can slow the spread to some degree, what degree we're not sure, but it doesn't slow it enough for it to be less transmissible to the degree that it disappears. Not even in conjunction with partial lockdowns. What I said early on is you would need either like a 2-month worldwide 100% full total lockdown, no human movement, no human industry, no commerce whatsoever, nobody leaving their property, getting shot if they try to, and then their body basically burned in the street where it drops. You'd either need that, or you need mass mandatory vaccination of everyone in the world over and over again, or you just let it take its course. Recognize it as an endemic disease, hopefully one that eventually mutates to be considerably less dangerous, which is what any sort of evolutionary pressure on it will accomplish. It takes time, though. And the thing is, politicians, when they're faced with this sort of crises, people expect them to pull a rabbit out of their hats and magically make the big bad flu go away, and it's simply not possible. But they feel compelled to do all of these things to do that. DeSantis has taken up the other line where he's saying, well, the economic fallout ultimately, in his judgment, will be worse, which I happen to agree with. So he decided to keep things open, take his lumps for a while, but then once other states began to eclipse Florida in the death toll rate and so forth, he gets to take credit and say, well, I never fell prey to the paranoia. Things are open here. And that's what's happening. For Biden to suggest that because he's relaxing restrictions on our external border, and you've got hundreds of thousands of people marching on it trying to get through Mexico at the moment, while threatening Florida. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. That's about all. Peace out.